Hello everyone. We've all heard countless jailbreak stories where prisoners either get caught or vanish forever. But today's tale is about a Japanese prisoner who didn't escape once or twice, but 4 times, and each escape is so thrilling it will send shivers down your spine. This inmate is considered among the world's most cunning prisoners, as no Japanese jail could hold him. He broke through every door and security measure with ease. So, who was this prisoner? How did he escape from jail 4 times, and what happened to him during these escapes? His story will astound you. The beginning of a life of crime. The story begins in 1936, when Japanese police in Aomori City arrested a 29-year-old man for robbery and murder. The man confessed to the robbery but insisted he hadn't committed the murder. Despite his pleas, the police tortured him extensively and forced a confession out of him for the murder. Following this, the Japanese police presented him in court, and the court sent him to Aomori prison, even though his trial was still ongoing. The man arrested by the police was named Yoshie Shiratori, born in Aomori City, Japan, on July 31, 1907. As Shiratori's father passed away when he was young, the burden of responsibility fell on him early, and he began working at the age of 12 or 13. He first worked at a tofu shop but later started catching crabs with fishermen. However, these jobs weren't enough to meet his needs, and he desperately wanted to earn more money quickly. This desire pushed him into the world of crime. He began robbing and stealing, which allowed him to earn a decent income. During this time, he also married a woman, and they had a daughter. In 1936, the Japanese police were searching for the killer involved in a robbery, and that's when Yoshie Shiratori fell into their hands. Since Shiratori was a professional thief and robber, the police put him in Aomori prison, even though he hadn't committed the murder. The first escape, Aomori prison, 1936. Shiratori began serving his time in prison. While in court, the public prosecutor repeatedly demanded the death penalty for him. Meanwhile, 2 prison guards approached Shiratori's cell and saw that he was still sleeping. Every prison has rules and regulations, where inmates are expected to sleep, wake up, and do everything on time. Shiratori usually followed these rules. But that day, he didn't wake up on time. This made the guards suspicious. One guard went inside his cell and pulled back his blanket. However, what they saw beneath the blanket made their jaws drop. The guards saw only a pillow under the blanket. Shiratori was gone. Before we delve deeper into the story, we need to understand what Shiratori endured in Aomori prison. It started with the harsh treatment he received. He was beaten mercilessly every day and subjected to vulgar abuse. This wasn't just Shiratori's experience. Every prisoner in the jail faced similar treatment, as most Japanese prisons at that time, with a few exceptions, operated under such conditions. In court, the public prosecutor continued to demand the death penalty for Shiratori, for a crime he claimed he never committed. To escape the death penalty and the prison's torture, Shiratori devised an escape plan. To begin, he spent several months observing the prison guards and their patrol routines, when their shifts changed, how long it took them to pass a spot again, and when the cell was last checked for the day. After months of observation, he noticed a 15-minute gap between the guards' rounds. This meant that if one guard passed his cell, the next guard would pass 15 minutes later, and this pattern continued for 24 hours. He decided he had to escape his cell within these 15 minutes. However, the biggest challenge was that after leaving his cell, he had to open 6 more doors to get out of the prison, all within that 15-minute window. This is where the story truly reveals Shiratori's extraordinary abilities, earning him the title of a superhuman. Shiratori had a unique skill. If he found even a small piece of iron wire or scrap metal, he could pick any lock in under a minute. He used this talent to his advantage. One day, he stole a wire from the bucket given to him for bathing. 3 days later, he made full preparations to escape that night. On the day he was to escape, around 5:30 a.m., just before a guard passed his cell on his round, Shiratori placed a pillow under his blanket, making it look like he was sleeping. The guard also thought Shiratori was asleep and continued his patrol, leaving Shiratori with a mere 15-minute window to escape. He quickly used the bucket wire to open his cell door. Within just 15 minutes, he opened all 6 other doors, then closed them again to avoid suspicion, and vanished from the prison. 15 minutes later, around 5:45 a.m., when the guard passed his cell again, he still thought Shiratori was sleeping, even though it was just a pillow under the blanket. The next morning, when the guards discovered Shiratori's escape, they searched the prison and its surroundings, but he was nowhere to be found. By then, he was far from the jail. This was Shiratori's first jailbreak, but his freedom lasted only 3 days, and the story behind it is quite interesting. After escaping, Shiratori was hiding in Aomori, as the police were searching for him everywhere. He had no money and nothing to eat, so he broke into a hospital and started stealing supplies. During this, a hospital staff member spotted him, apprehended him, and handed him over to the Japanese police. Since the police were already looking for him, as soon as they found him, they put him back in Aomori prison. After this, Shiratori was charged not only with murder and robbery but also with escaping from prison. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment for all charges. The second escape, Akita Prison, 1942. Shiratori had been serving his sentence for 3 years, and then came 1939, when World War II began, dividing the world into 2 halves. Japan was part of this war, fighting against countries like America, Britain, the Soviet Union, and France. During World War II, in 1942, due to security reasons, Shiratori was transferred from Aomori prison to Akita prison. The reason for this transfer was that Akita prison was more secure than Aomori prison. During this time, when the guards at Akita prison learned that Shiratori had previously escaped from Aomori prison, they built a special cell for him. The cell was so small that only one person could sleep in it. Its walls were made of copper and were very smooth, and the cell ceiling was twice as high as other cells. The cell door was not barred but completely solid, and there was only one window in the cell, located on the ceiling, to allow air and light inside. When Shiratori arrived at Akita prison, not only was he placed in a special cell built just for him, but the Akita prison guards, aware of his escape record, held a deep resentment towards him. They began treating him even worse than he was treated at Aomori prison. These guards beat him daily, made him work more than other prisoners, and tortured him even more. Additionally, he was kept handcuffed 24 hours a day and forced to sleep on the floor even in cold weather, without adequate warm clothing. There was a head guard in that prison named Kobayashi, who was very compassionate. He never mistreated Shiratori and often stopped other guards when they were beating him. Many months passed, but the guards' torture of Shiratori only increased. Then came June 15, 1942. At midnight on June 15, 1942, a guard on patrol peeked into Shiratori's cell and was stunned. Shiratori was gone. He immediately informed the other guards, and when they all entered Shiratori's cell, they found nothing but his handcuffs. During this, the guards looked up at the cell ceiling and saw that the window on the roof was missing. It didn't take them long to understand the whole situation. But one question kept bothering them: how did Shiratori reach the ceiling? And that in itself is a very exciting story. As soon as Shiratori arrived at this prison, he began planning his escape. To escape from here, he used his second extraordinary ability. He could climb even the smoothest walls with ease, like a lizard. So, when he arrived at the jail, he first managed to get a piece of metal from somewhere. Since he was already an expert at picking locks and handcuffs, whenever he got a little time after the guards left at night, he would unlock his handcuffs and practice climbing the copper wall. After just a few days of practice, he reached the window on the ceiling and saw that while the window itself was metal, its frame was made of wood. Every night, he would unlock his handcuffs, go up, try to loosen the wooden frame by shaking it, and then come back down, put his handcuffs back on, and sit as if nothing had happened. After months of continuous effort, one day, the window finally came loose. Yet, he still didn't escape and waited for the right moment. The right moment arrived on June 15, 1942, when it was raining heavily that night. The rain was accompanied by a storm, and under the cover of this rain and storm, he first unlocked his handcuffs and went up. Then, he removed the window and disappeared from the prison through the roof. Due to the rain and storm, the sound of his movements did not reach any guard, and thus, he escaped from Akita prison for the second time. After escaping from Akita prison, Shiratori wanted to return home. But he didn't go home, thinking that the police would be watching his house. Therefore, he started living hidden in Akita city. Meanwhile, as soon as the news of his escape spread, the guards began searching for him everywhere, and Akita prison's head guard, Kobayashi, also went all out to find him. Now, along with the guards, the Japanese police were also desperately searching for him. But there was no sign of Shiratori. The Betrayal and the Third Escape, Abashiri Prison, 1944. 3 months passed in this way, and on the night of September 18, 1942, head guard Kobayashi was at his home when suddenly someone knocked on his door. As Kobayashi opened the door, he was stunned because it was none other than Shiratori himself standing before him. Shiratori was in a very bad condition. So, Kobayashi invited him in, gave him food and drink, and then asked him why he came back to him when he had escaped from prison. In response to this question, Shiratori said that he never wanted to escape from prison. However, the way the guards treated the prisoners like animals forced him to escape. Continuing his statement, Shiratori told the guard that he was the only one in the prison who treated him well, and that's why he came to him because he was the only one who could help him. Shiratori also told Kobayashi that he wanted to surrender, but not to the police, but to the Japanese Justice Department, so he could tell them about the mistreatment of prisoners in jail. After listening to Shiratori's entire story, Kobayashi reassured him and said he would definitely help him, but something else was going on in his mind. After this conversation, as soon as Shiratori went to the bathroom, Kobayashi immediately called the police, and a short while later, the police arrested him from Kobayashi's house. This was a huge betrayal for Shiratori, and after this betrayal, he decided that he would never trust anyone again. After being caught again, he was prosecuted once more for escaping from prison, and for this jailbreak, an additional 3 years were added to his life sentence. During the court hearing, Shiratori confessed his guilt and also stated that he was fully prepared to go to prison but asked to be sent to a prison in Tokyo. At that time, the conditions in Tokyo's prisons were quite good compared to other Japanese prisons, and the weather there was also warm. However, the court rejected Shiratori's appeal and, considering his 2 jailbreak records, sent him to Abashiri prison. Abashiri prison had a history that no prisoner had ever escaped from it because its security was very tight, and if anyone even tried to escape, they were shot immediately. Abashiri prison housed Japan's most dangerous and ruthless criminals, and even a bird couldn't fly in or out. Even if one were to assume that a prisoner managed to escape from the guard's sight and get out of the prison, it was still impossible for them to survive because Abashiri prison was surrounded by snow-covered mountains for several kilometers. Throughout the year, it snowed for many months in that area, and even in summer, the temperature remained below zero. Because of this, it was also called Alcatraz prison. Shiratori now arrived at Abashiri prison, and a special cell was built for him there too. By this time, all the windows and doors were made very strong. This time, the window size was made smaller than his body so that even if he somehow removed the window frame, he wouldn't be able to get out. In this prison, just like in other prisons, the guards tortured him, verbally abused him, made fun of him, beat him badly, and challenged him to escape. One day, several guards collectively beat Shiratori so severely that in a fit of rage, he broke his handcuffs in front of them and challenged them that he would escape from there. Seeing this, the guards were scared, and that's when they discovered his third ability, his superhuman strength, which he had demonstrated by breaking iron handcuffs. After witnessing his strength, the Abashiri prison guards understood that opening or breaking normal handcuffs was child's play for Shiratori. Therefore, they had special handcuffs and shackles made for him. The unique feature of these handcuffs and shackles was that there was no place to insert a key anywhere, so opening them with anything was impossible. These handcuffs and shackles also weighed 20 kilograms each, making them impossible to break with human strength. Shiratori was fitted with these handcuffs and shackles and remained bound in them 24 hours a day. His handcuffs were not removed even while eating, forcing him to eat like an animal, and he had great difficulty sleeping because of these handcuffs. Only once every 2 or 3 weeks were his handcuffs removed for bathing and changing clothes, and to open them, 2 special artisans would come from outside, taking almost 2 hours to unlock these handcuffs and shackles. Shiratori had been serving his sentence in this prison for a year, and then came August 26, 1944. As I mentioned earlier, World War II was ongoing at this time. So, on the night of August 26, 1944, a wartime blackout was declared in Japan. A wartime blackout is declared in any country when enemy planes attack at night, and during this time, all house lights are turned off, and all doors and windows are closed and covered with black cloth so that no light is visible. So, on the night of August 26, 1944, when there was a wartime blackout across Japan, an Abashiri prison guard heard footsteps on the roof. Hearing this sound, he went outside to check but saw no one there. However, when he peeked into Shiratori's cell, his jaw dropped. The 20-kilogram handcuffs that Shiratori was wearing were lying in a corner, and Shiratori had broken out of jail for the 3rd time. Now, the biggest question is, how did Shiratori escape from prison? The 4th escape, Sapporo Prison, 1947. The answer is Shiratori had been planning his jailbreak for the past 6 months. Shiratori was given a bowl of miso soup with his meal every day. He would save a little bit of the soup in the bowl each day, and when the guards weren't looking, he would take a mouthful of soup and then pour it onto the bolts of the iron window on his cell door. Additionally, he would also pour this soup onto the joints of his handcuffs and shackles. He had been doing this continuously for the past 6 months, and his purpose behind doing this was to rust the iron handcuffs and the metal frame of the door due to the salt in the miso soup. After 6 months of continuous effort, his trick finally worked, and due to the reaction of iron and salt, rust began to form. By August 1944, one by one, all the nuts and bolts on the door and window had rusted. On the night of August 26, 1944, when all of Japan was dark due to the wartime blackout, he took advantage of it. First, he used all his strength to break his rusted handcuffs and shackles, and it's difficult to understand where he got such immense strength. After that, he opened the bolts of the door's window and removed the window with its frame. But there was still a problem in front of him, and that was that the size of all the windows in that cell was made smaller than his body, and that's why, even after removing the frame, there wasn't enough space for him to get out. Here, he used his 4th ability, which was that he could dislocate all the joints of his body, making himself smaller or larger. Shiratori first took off all his clothes except his underwear, dislocated both his shoulders, and came out of his cell through the window. After that, he went to the prison roof and, taking advantage of the wartime blackout, disappeared into the darkness. Thus, Shiratori became the first prisoner to successfully escape from Abashiri prison. He knew very well that due to the wartime blackout, the prison guards would not try to search for him much that night, and he would have the whole night to get out of that area. And that's exactly what happened. The Abashiri prison guards did not search for him much that night, but the next morning, he was searched everywhere but found nowhere. After this, the guards searched even further for several days, but they found nothing but snow-covered hills and animals. And that's why they were happy for the first time, because they knew that even if Shiratori somehow survived these animals, the cold would kill him. After several months of searching, when Shiratori was nowhere to be found, they became convinced that he was either dead or had been hunted by some animal, and gradually, with time, the search for him also cooled down. Meanwhile, in August 1945, America dropped atomic bombs on Japan, and Japan surrendered. As a result, America took complete control of Japan. Since Shiratori had also been on the run for a long time, people gradually forgot about him amidst all this. 2 years had passed since Shiratori escaped from prison, and then, at the end of 1946, Japanese police arrested a man from a place called Sapporo on charges of murder. After the arrest, when the identity of this killer was revealed, it turned out to be Yoshie Shiratori, who was already serving a life sentence and had been accused of escaping from prison 3 times. After his arrest, the police began questioning him, and then he started narrating the story of the past 2 years. Starting his story, Shiratori explained that after escaping from Abashiri prison, he found a cave among the snow-covered mountains, and he made that cave his home. To escape the cold, he used fire and hunted small animals to feed himself. In this way, he spent the next 2 years completely cut off from the world. But after 2 years passed, he couldn't stay inside any longer and came out. As soon as he came out and reached among people, he was stunned because he saw American soldiers everywhere. English was written in many places in addition to Japanese, and Japanese women were roaming with American soldiers. Seeing this, he could not believe his eyes and immediately started searching for newspapers. It was then that he learned that America had dropped bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, due to which Japan had surrendered last year, and World War II had ended. Since America had taken control of all of Japan, Shiratori thought there was no point in hiding now because everyone must have forgotten about him by now. His thinking was largely correct, so he decided to go back to his wife and children. Shiratori traveled on foot for almost 50 days to reach Sapporo. But upon arriving there, he made a mistake. What happened was that during his journey, when he reached Sapporo, he was very hungry, and then he saw a tomato field. Without asking, he went into the field and started picking and eating tomatoes. He was still eating tomatoes when the farmer of that field arrived and thought he was a thief because there were many thefts in that area at the time. Seeing Shiratori, the farmer attacked him with a hoe. In self-defense, Shiratori also attacked the farmer, and due to this, the hoe accidentally hit the farmer, causing his death. Seeing this, the people nearby caught Shiratori and handed him over to the police, and thus, about 2 years after his third jailbreak, Shiratori was once again in police hands. After his arrest, he was presented in Sapporo court. Shiratori stated that the farmer's death occurred in self-defense during a scuffle. However, his plea was not heard in court, and for this murder, he was directly sentenced to death in 1947. After the sentence, he was sent to Sapporo prison, where a special cell was also built for him. Its walls, ceiling, and doors were made very strong using steel. This time, the windows in his cell were made smaller than Shiratori's head size so that even if he somehow managed to remove them, he couldn't get out, because while he could make his body size smaller or larger, he couldn't change the size of his head. Additionally, 6 guards were specially appointed to keep a 24-hour watch on Shiratori, and therefore, this time, he was not even handcuffed because they were completely confident in their security. And even if they had handcuffed him, it would have been of no use because he was already an expert at opening handcuffs. Shiratori now spent his days in Sapporo prison, awaiting his execution. However, when he arrived at this prison, he often looked at the ceiling of his cell, which was quite high, and he did this every day. The 6 guards who were keeping a 24-hour watch on him would laugh when they saw Shiratori doing this, thinking that he was planning to escape from the cell ceiling again. And that's why they would regularly check the cell ceiling, walls, and windows, but they found nothing. A few months later, Shiratori developed a new habit. He started sleeping a lot and always stayed on his mattress on the floor. He also didn't wake up on time in the morning, for which he was often beaten, but he did not give up his habit of sleeping. He continued to do this for the next several months, and by now, he was also 40 years old, and some of these guards were also compassionate and let him sleep longer due to his advancing age. And when he did nothing for the next several months, the guards slowly became careless about him. One morning, when Shiratori did not wake up even after being called several times, a guard got very angry. He opened his cell and angrily pulled back his blanket. But just like the first jailbreak, there was only a pillow under that blanket. Seeing this, the guards panicked, and they immediately checked the cell door, window, ceiling, and all the walls. But they found nothing broken. The guards couldn't understand where Shiratori had disappeared. Had the earth swallowed him, or the sky taken him? And then a guard removed Shiratori's mattress, and only then did they realize how big a mistake they had made. Actually, considering Shiratori's history of jailbreaks, they had strengthened everything from his handcuffs to the entire walls, windows, and ceiling, but they forgot to check the floor, and this proved to be their biggest mistake. When they removed his mattress, they found a tunnel right underneath it, and this was the tunnel that Shiratori had been digging under his mattress for the past several months. As soon as any guard looked away from him for even a minute, he would immediately place a pillow in his place, go under the mattress, and start digging the tunnel with a soup bowl. Now you might be wondering where he put the excavated soil from the tunnel. Well, there was a small space right under the wooden floor where his mattress was placed, which is made to prevent the floor's wood from getting damaged, and he used to hide the tunnel soil in that very place. Shiratori, who initially kept looking up, did so to make the guards think that this time he would escape from above, which diverted their attention, and they never paid attention to the ground. In addition to this, his habit of sleeping late was also part of his plan so that over time, the guards would become careless about him, and when he went down to dig, they would not suspect him. After a few months, when Shiratori had prepared the tunnel, he also escaped from Sapporo prison through the tunnel, and this was his fourth jailbreak. After this, Shiratori was searched in many places, but he was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, after escaping from prison, he kept hiding here and there for almost a year, and the year 1948 arrived. Freedom and the end of his journey. By then, Shiratori was tired of running from the police because he was also getting older. One day, he was sitting on a bench in a city park when a police officer came and sat next to him and started smoking a cigarette. Seeing this, Shiratori got nervous. At first, he thought of getting up and leaving. But then he thought that the police officer might get suspicious. So, he remained seated on the bench. Meanwhile, the police officer took out his cigarette pack and offered a cigarette to Shiratori, and Shiratori was stunned to see this because, in those days, cigarettes were considered a luxury item, and only rich people smoked cigarettes. Anyway, when the officer offered him a cigarette, Shiratori took it and started smoking. But as he smoked, Shiratori's eyes filled with tears. Because until that day, all the policemen he had met had treated him like an animal. Even the guard he had trusted and told his story to had betrayed him. But when a police officer, who appeared to be of a much higher rank from his uniform, offered him such a cigarette, his behavior and respect shook him to the core, and he realized that not every policeman was the same. After this, Shiratori told the police officer his full name. Hearing it, the police officer was also shocked, and then Shiratori told him his entire story and also explained why he escaped from prison every time. This time, the police officer Shiratori trusted turned out to be honest, and after hearing Shiratori's story, he presented him before the Japanese Justice Department. Before the Justice Department, Shiratori spoke about the animal-like treatment of prisoners in jail. After this, Shiratori was presented in Sapporo High Court, and when they properly investigated his case, they found that the farmer Shiratori had killed died accidentally in self-defense during a struggle. Furthermore, every time he escaped from prison, he never harmed any guard or caused any damage to anyone. Whereas the prison guards always tortured him. Ultimately, the Sapporo High Court dismissed Shiratori's death sentence and sentenced him to 20 years in prison. At the same time, his appeal to go to Tokyo prison was also accepted, and he was sent to Fuchu prison in Tokyo. In Fuchu prison, all arrangements were made to prevent his escape. However, since Fuchu prison was in Tokyo, the weather there was warm, and the guards also treated Shiratori well. Therefore, this time, he decided to serve his entire sentence in that prison. About 14 years later, in 1961, due to Shiratori's good behavior, he was released from prison on parole. This was the first time Shiratori came out of a prison legally. Now, he had no fear of the police, and after that, he went to Aomori, where his family was. But when Shiratori reached home, he found out that his wife had passed away a few years ago. However, his daughter still lived there and was now grown up. He spent the next several years doing small jobs and living with his daughter, and on February 24, 1989, at the age of 71, he passed away due to a heart attack. This was the story of the prisoner for whom every method was adopted to prevent his escape. Yet, he escaped from prison not once or twice, but 4 times. Later, when his story became known in Japan, he began to be regarded as an anti-hero. Several books were written and films made about Shiratori's life, and the way he escaped from prison using miso soup became so famous that a part of that prison was later converted into a museum. Even today, a statue of him is displayed in that museum, which shows how he escaped from that prison.